Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our second social equity verification informational session, where we have the exciting opportunity to learn more about the social equity verification process with the Office of Cannabis Management. My name is Maron Melican, and I look forward to leading this presentation for you all. So just to get us started, I developed an agenda, and the items that we plan to cover during today's event include understanding social equity in cannabis licensing, going over the eligibility criteria for social equity status, and really doing a walkthrough of the various verification, both the verification process and the various resources that we have to be able to aid and assist you as you plan to potentially pursue your um, social equity verification. So a little bit about the Office of Cannabis Management. The Office of Cannabis Management will release applications, issue licenses, and develop regulations outlining how and when cannabis businesses can participate in the new adult use industry. Over the last year and a half or so, the OCM has been developing the regulatory framework for for the adult use cannabis and establishing processes and timelines to apply for licenses. So the Office of Cannabis Management, or OCM, is really responsible for implementing and enforcing the rules and regulations governing Minnesota's cannabis market. One of our key responsibilities includes overseeing the cannabis business license application process and awarding licenses. As a part of this process, we manage a third-party vendor to verify the social equity status of applicants. During the start of this presentation, we'll provide an overview of what it means to be verified as a social equity applicant. But to note, completing social equity verification is just the first step for people who wish to apply for a cannabis license with the social equity classification. However, verification alone does not equate to submitting a business license application. An applicant verified as a social equity applicant retains that status in perpetuity as well. In this presentation, we will talk about how you as a prospective applicant are responsible for working with our third-party verification vendor, Creative Services, Inc., to verify the required information if you choose to become social equity verified. And one thing to also note is that verification is provided at no cost to you. Generally speaking, the process, if you choose to become social equity verified and apply for a business license with that classification, the process will start with the verification of applicants who meet qualifications for social equity applicant status. Following that, those verified through the process will submit an application for a business license, go through a review and vetting process, and if qualified, be entered into a lottery if, in fact, they are applying for a capped license. We'll talk a little bit later about the differences between some of the capped and uncapped licenses within the social equity verified groups as well. Applicants selected through the lottery for one of those capped licenses will then proceed to the next steps in the licensing process before being awarded a license. Today's program will, generally speaking, will primarily focus on the social equity application verification process and essentially that criteria. So to get us started and just to provide some grounding, I want to highlight our upcoming license cycle. As you all can see, January 15th, being tomorrow, is when the social equity verification window opens, followed by our license application window and future lottery. The timeline can also be found on our website, mn.gov/OCM. And so this is just a helpful resource to continue to support you as you are making your respective business decisions on whether you want to apply for an upcoming license. So to get us started, let's talk about understanding social equity in cannabis licensing. There are a number of items and considerations to be aware of when deciding if you would like to pursue the path of a social equity applicant. Completing social equity verification is the first step for people who wish to apply for a cannabis business license with that social equity classification. Verification alone does not equate to submitting a business license application either. An applicant verified as a social equity applicant, as said before, they retain that status in perpetuity. Social equity verification is an option to consider when making business decisions on the path to obtaining a cannabis license. It is not required for obtaining a cannabis license. As with deciding which license type to pursue, it is a consideration for each prospective applicant to determine which route, whether that is of a social equity verified or not, best meets their unique business goals. I want to also note, though, that OCM is unable to provide legal or business advice and cannot assist in decisions on which license type to apply for or which classification to pursue, that being a social equity classification or non-social equity. And we really do recommend seeking counsel or others to make these determinations. In an upcoming table, we'll provide information to help you consider as you're making these determinations as well. So just in understanding, like, what is a social equity applicant? In Minnesota law, a social equity applicant is defined as an applicant for a cannabis business license or a cannabis license that has at least 65% ownership and control held by one or more individuals who meet at least one of the criteria listed on the screen. This criteria was written into law. This is an important detail as folks are contemplating whether they believe they are qualified to be a social equity applicant and whether they choose to get verified. It's also important to note that social equity licenses must be owned at least by 65% by social equity applicants, which can include one person or multiple individuals. Each person who makes up that 65% ownership must be verified in order to proceed to applying for that social equity classification of the license. We have updated guidance on our website that also shares details around the various acceptable documentation associated with the various social equity criteria. I'll go more into depth about these individual criteria and the various supporting material that you would be required to submit if you so choose to become social equity verified. So as mentioned in a previous slide, the table shown before you provides information to consider as you make your determination on whether to become social equity verified. Prospective cannabis business license applicants who plan to apply for one of the four capped license types, cultivator, meso businesses, manufacturers, and retailers, will be required to go through a lottery. For these four license types, 50% of the licenses available for each type are reserved specifically for applicants with the social equity verification. And this was written into statute, chapter 342.14. Social equity verified applicants who apply for one of the four capped license types and are deemed qualified will be entered into a lottery for a distribution of licenses for social equity applicants. If not selected, qualified social equity verified applicants will then be entered into a second lottery for the remaining licenses available. This means they may be provided with up to 2 opportunities to be entered into a lottery. And I just want to emphasize again that these are for the 4 capped licenses because these are in fact ones that would have a lottery associated to them. Prospective cannabis business license applicants who plan to apply for one of the uncapped licenses, micro businesses, delivery, wholesaler, testing facility, transporter, and medical cannabis combination, or later on the event organizer, lower potency hemp edible retailer, and the lower potency hemp edible manufacturer, will not be entered into a lottery for license consideration as there is no limit on the distribution of the uncapped license types. All applicants for these license types are considered based on the application requirements and qualified standards, and social equity verified status does not impact review for these uncapped license types. And so this table that we've developed for you all really can help you make your own respective business decisions in identifying whether it makes sense for you or not to get verified yeah, for your future cannabis license if you so choose to pursue one. So I am going to go over a few other just various considerations as you are thinking about pursuing a social equity verification and just overall considering the obtaining a license. Sorry. So there are a number of considerations to keep in mind as you're making your business decisions, one of them being the social equity license transfer considerations. Social equity verified applicants who obtain a cannabis business license with a social equity classification will be subject to the transfer rules as outlined in Minnesota statutes. That's statutes 34212. For the first 3 years, these rules allow social equity verified business licenses to only be sold to other social equity applicants through a process designed by the Office of Cannabis Management's Division of Social Equity. After 3 years, any license transfer of a social equity license classification is subject to prior written approval through a process designed by the Division of Social Equity. Applicants who obtain a cannabis business license will be subject to the transfer rules as outlined in Minnesota statutes 34212. And licenses may be freely transferred subject to prior written approval of the office. Another consideration to keep in mind, as I had mentioned this earlier as well, is that to receive social equity license classification, social equity licenses must be owned by at least 65% by social equity applicants, which can include one person or multiple individuals. Every person who makes up that 65%, however, must be verified to apply for a cannabis license. And just a few more considerations to keep in mind is one, there is no cost to the applicant to apply for social equity verification specifically. There is a cost, however, to apply for and receive a business license for all applicants. And these specific fees and costs were determined by statute, and they can be found on the OCM website. The licensees who have elected to classify their license as a social equity license can promote themselves as social equity classified businesses. There may be external considerations that benefit these classified businesses, including prospective grant opportunities, external funding opportunities, partnership deals, marketing options that are available to social equity verified or licensees who have a social equity licensee classification. OCM, however, does not offer, manage, or oversee these prospective opportunities and cannot offer business advice on the impact of any potential business decisions related to social equity verification classification. So I really just want to highlight that piece is that there may be various benefits associated with having that social equity classification. However, those external opportunities are not OCM does not oversee any of them. So, and one last additional consideration is, if applying for social equity verification, one thing to note is that it is important that you complete your verification as soon as possible to ensure our third-party vendors, Social or Creative Services Inc., can complete and verify the required information prior to the upcoming license application window. And so I will go into further depth of the types of materials that or documentation that you'll need, and really emphasizing the importance of why we want folks to be able to get their information in right away if they choose to pursue this option. Um, just again, timeline related. So our system is planning to open tomorrow, January 15th, 2025, for social equity verification, and we'll close on January 30th. And again, we just want to emphasize that it's really important that if folks are pursuing this, that they start the verification process early so that they can really begin engaging with the third-party vendor, and they can make sure that they are gathering the respective materials and documentation that they need in order to be verified. And then, of course, following the next step after social equity verification, both for social equity verified applicants as well as general applicants, is the license application window. This process includes submitting an application on OCM's online application system, along with all the required documentation that will be associated. That will be taking place on February 18th and close on March 14th, 2025. And we will have upcoming guidance materials as well as future webinars that will be posted on our website. So now we will talk a little bit more and do a walkthrough of the eligibility criteria for social equity verification and the essentially the acceptable documentation. One thing to just note is that again, like this is you as prospective applicants are really responsible for working with that third party verification vendor to verify all of the required information. And so that is why we just highly encourage folks that if you are choosing to pursue this, definitely get in your applications sooner rather than later to ensure that you are able to have that back and forth with the vendor to be able to ensure that you have all of your necessary documentation in place. So as we go through this, I will go through a number of the various criteria that allows an individual to potentially be social equity verified, as well as the various acceptable documentation that is associated with that. The first criteria for being considered for social equity verification is an individual who was convicted of an offense involving the possession or sale of cannabis or marijuana prior to May 1st, 2023. And the acceptable documentation for this criteria includes official court documents showing conviction information. This is, again, another one of those items that I encourage folks to get in early and be able to reach out to the relevant parties sooner rather than later to ensure that you can hopefully retrieve the necessary documentation. One thing that we do want to note here, however, is pursuant to Minnesota Statutes Section 260B.245, an offense committed by a minor adjudicated in juvenile court is not considered a criminal conviction and does not qualify under this provision. In addition, an offense or a charge that does not result in a conviction pursuant to Minnesota Statute 609 dot 1095 such as a dismissal or a stay of adjudication does not qualify under this provision either. And so this is something to note. We'll ensure that this is also listed on our website. But for the various criteria regarding convictions, we are not able to qualify under these specific provisions. So our second criteria is an individual who had a parent, guardian, child, spouse, or dependent convicted of an offense involving the possession or sale of cannabis prior to May 1st, 2023. And for this, again, that acceptable documentation is is an official court document showing conviction information and one of the following for relationship documentation, that being a birth certificate, a marriage certificate, an adoption decree, or a court document that, for example, a letter of guardianship, adoption placement agreement, etc. And so again, this is one of those items where I highly encourage you to reach out to us or reach out to the vendor about the specific documentation that you would like to submit. And of course, we are always willing to support you through those questions. And the next criteria is an individual who is a dependent of someone convicted of an offense involving the possession or sale of cannabis prior to May 1st, 2023. And again, similar to before, official court document showing conviction information and one of the following for relationship documentation, that being birth certificate, adoption decree, or a form of court documentation, such as a letter of guardianship, adoption, placement agreement, etc. The next criteria is an individual who is a military veteran, including service-disabled veterans or current or former members of the National Guard. And acceptable documentation is a certificate of release or discharge from active duty, the National Guard report of separation and record of service, or an official status document if currently serving in the National Guard. The next criteria is a military veteran or National Guard member who lost honorable status due to an offense involving the possession or sale of cannabis. And this is, again, acceptable documentation can be found on the screen as well. Again, the certificate of release or discharge from active duty, National Guard report of separation and record of service, or official status documents. And our next criteria, and this one is a lot longer, but I will do my best to go through it with you all. But this criteria, as can be found on the screen, outlines an individual who has been a resident for the past 5 years of one or more sub areas, such as census tracts or neighborhoods. And specifically, this individual can essentially I apologize. Let me actually retrace what I was just saying. So this next criteria can be, as can be found on the screen, it really outlines an individual who has been a resident one one or more of these sub areas, as can be found on, as can be listed on our screen right now. And this includes high cannabis enforcement rates as determined by federal or state studies or data. Or communities with a poverty rate of 20% or more, communities with a median family income not exceeding 80% of the statewide median family income, or communities where at least 20% of households are receiving supplemental nutrition assistance or SNAP assistance, and populations that experience high level of vulnerability, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. And I will just note that we have developed a resource that should be helpful to you all. It's specifically a map that you would be able to access in order to go and see if you may qualify under some of these criteria. And so the acceptable documentation specifically for this includes any combination of at least two of the following documents for 5 separate years from calendar year 2021 to 2025, displaying a valid address associated with the prospective applicant. So examples of documentation include a copy of a lease, signed and dated, driver's license or government issued ID, a mortgage loan, bank statement, utility bill, your W-2 or 1099, your tax return signed and dated, court documents, credit card statements, or a housing authority record. And so recognizing that there are a number of documents required within this space, we highly encourage folks begin to interact with us sooner rather than later on this, so that we can so that you can work with our vendor or ask us any relevant questions that you may have regarding acceptable documentation. One thing I do want to note is, due to the lack of relevant data, OCM was unable to conduct the study directed by Minnesota Statutes 34204, which identifies areas experiencing disproportionately high levels of cannabis enforcement. Recent changes to the law allows applicants who believe they meet this criteria to submit a study or report based on federal or state data, or arrests or convictions to OCM. OCM will then evaluate the submitted data to determine if it meets the specified criteria. And again, one item to note is that as you work with our vendor, they may request increased documentation, especially if there are changes in your address. It is always important to provide enough thorough information to support your verification. And our last criteria is an individual who participated in farm operations for at least 3 years and currently provides the majority of the day-to-day physical labor and management on a farm, with gross sales between 5,000 and 100,000 in the previous year. And as you can see listed on the screen, there are a number of items that you would be required to submit as well, if you so choose to get verified under this criteria. So one item to note, as we talked about the various court records that an individual will be required to provide the office or our vendor if choosing to get verified through those first 3 criteria. We especially want to acknowledge this piece and this guidance. OCM has put together some guidance on where individuals can go to try to retrieve court documentation showing conviction information. We highly encourage that you work with our vendor to identify which additional sources of information could be considered as well. And so this information is on our website. As we continue to receive further guidance, we'll continue to update this information. But please feel free to ask us questions if there is additional guidance that you are aware of that is out there. I will just also say, very important to make sure that if you are going through any of these routes, that you do so earlier or sooner rather than later, to ensure that the respective offices and such are also able to retrieve this information. So now we will talk a little bit about the verification process itself. We just did a walkthrough of the various criteria. We also talked a bit about, the different reasons that an individual may want to choose to pursue a social equity classification. And now we'll go through a walkthrough of what will that application essentially look like tomorrow, if you so choose to get verified. The first step in the verification process will be to create an applicant profile by going to OCM's website. A link will be live tomorrow, January 15th, with access to this site. To begin, you will navigate to the Citizen Portal, which is what you see in front of you now. Once you reach the main screen, you will proceed to the sign-in section, which can be found on the right. You will type in all the required information on this screen, which includes your username or email. You may either type in the username or email address that you created during the registration process if you've already done that. If you haven't registered, however, as a new user yet, you will click Create an Account, which is right below that sign-in section, and you will go through the process to officially be able to create an account. And then, of course, you will type in your password. Make sure that you have all of this information saved, because you will frequent this site more than once, especially if you choose to pursue towards a cannabis business license. Following, you'll select the sign-in button, and once you complete your sign-in, you will be directed to a dashboard page or an application page. For those creating an account for the first time, once you select the submit button, your account will essentially be officially registered. You will know that you have successfully registered your account when you see a green pop-up screen that says your account is successfully registered. And at the same time, you'll receive an email similar to the one that you are seeing above on the screen, that is essentially your welcome email, and it'll have your account information, your username, and your username. This is essentially your confirmation email that you registered for an account correctly. So, of course, after setting up your account for the first time, you will navigate back over to the portal and sign in. Again, a link to the portal will also be on the OCM website. Once you've gotten to the main portal screen, you will go ahead to the middle area where it says input your username or email. And just always remember that if you, for whatever reason, forget your email, you can always be able to retrieve that once again. Once you are brought to the next screen, you will select Create an Application. You could find that right on the front of the screen right now, on the top, essentially on the top left. In the future, when logging into the Citizen Portal, this will display information about records associated with your account. For example, within the social equity verification process, as well as if you choose to pursue a cannabis business license. The next step will be moving forward to the disclaimer page. At this point, you will be brought to a screen that will display a general disclaimer. You will use the scroll bar on the right-hand side of the disclaimer window to review the disclaimer essentially in its entirety. Select the checkbox below the disclaimer box to acknowledge that you have read and understand all of this information. This is required to be able to continue. You'll select the Continue Application button, and you will now be taken to the social equity verification, step 1 of the social equity verification process. So now we are in the first step of the social equity verification process. On this screen, the first thing that we're going to do is provide account information. And you will do that by selecting the blue icon that says select from account. The contact information that you created in the registration process will likely already be added here. If for any reason you need to, if for any reason you needed to provide alternate information, you can select the Add New button and fill out all the required fields. We encourage you to review the details about qualifications to be considered for a social equity applicant. Take a moment to review everything that is within this page. Complete the social equity acknowledgement that you could see on the screen right now. Select the checkbox to the left of the social equity acknowledgement. And then you will click select the continue application button. And now you will be and after this, you would be taken to a review screen. On that review screen, the window provides you the opportunity to review the selections that you made essentially on this screen. Depending on your choice, you would be able to follow the various appropriate steps. If all the information is correct and you're ready to submit, you would select the continue application button, either at the top or the bottom of the screen. If you need to edit any of the information, you can select the edit button next to any of the items. And you will return to the previous page to update all of the appropriate information. And if once all of the information is correct and you are ready to submit, you will select the continue application button either at the top or the bottom of the screen. And once you have submitted your information, you will be taken to an acknowledgement page. At this point, you will receive a green pop-up that lets you know that your application has been successfully submitted. The acknowledgement page will show that your application was successfully submitted. You will also receive an email confirming the successful submission with your record ID. And you can use this to return to your application. And details about essentially your next steps, as you can see on the screen right now. The email will be sent to the email that was associated with your login credentials. So essentially the email that you registered to set up this account. In this email, it will also note that CSI, Creative Services Inc., our third-party vendor, will reach out to you with next steps in the social equity verification process. So, the next step in the social equity verification process is your official submission of your social equity verification materials with our third-party vendor, CSI. Once you successfully complete the social equity verification form, you will receive communication from CSI like the one that's displayed. This email will come from the email do-not-reply@creativeservices.com. You may have to check your junk folders just to ensure that you aren't missing this, because we want to make sure that you have all the information to successfully become verified. The subject of the email will state Minnesota Office of Cannabis Management, OCM, Social Equity Verification. You'll click on the link in that email, which will take you to the CSI portal. The link will bring you to a page where you will be asked to provide demographic information. The link will, of course, bring you over to this page where it has a series of demographic information that it is requesting of you. Please provide the various demographic information in the CSI portal. Note all fields highlighted in the pink or red color must be completed. The question mark next to each field will show acceptable formatting and responses as well. An additional item to note is that you may select the Save Progress dash Return Later button on the left at any point in time during the process. You can always re-access the portal from the original email that was sent to you with a specific link that was designed for you. To re-enter the portal, you will be asked to enter the last 4 digits of your social security number. After submitting your demographic information, you will be brought to a screen that gives you the option to receive a copy of your consumer report. By default, you are pre-selected to receive a copy of your consumer report. So, you'll then select Continue to the next step. On this next page, you will be prompted to review and fill out a series of forms, including two disclosures, an acknowledgement and authorization form, summary of rights, state notices, and a tenancy warning. These forms will provide CSI what they need to review your information to verify your social equity eligibility. Click on each link and digitally sign or review all the options. The final form on this page is the data collection form. Complete this form by providing all of the information to show that you qualify for social equity verification. For every criteria that you indicate you have supporting documents, the system will auto-create upload links in the next step of the process. If you choose to leave the data collection form at any point, your progress on this document will be saved for your return as well. On this page, you will be asked to upload all of those supporting documents for any criteria you indicated from the previous step on the data collection form. After uploading relevant documentation for the various criteria and clicking submit, you will see a confirmation page. A few items to note here. It'll be important to save the URL in order to go back and view a real-time status update. You will also receive an email upon completion from do not reply at creativeservices.com. The subject of that email will be thank you for submitting your information. So again, I think it's always really important to note that it's great to be able to save this page, save this URL specifically, so that at any point in time you can check the status, be able to check the status of where CSI is with your application and be able to do any follow-up. As mentioned earlier, you will also receive that email upon completion from do not reply at creativeservices.com. And upon completion, all applicants will also receive a copy of their consumer report. This report will be delivered via secure link sent in an email. In addition, one thing to note is that CSI will be in contact with you in the next few days after the submission of your application and your information. One thing that I do want to note is that it's extremely important to ensure that you are in contact with them as they do their best to be able to work with you to ensure that you have all of the relevant documentation. And so being able to interact with them, being able to ask relevant questions that you may have as they strive to work with you to ensure that you have the relevant documentation to actually become verified. All right. So now we are going to talk a little bit about the Social Equity Certification Report itself. So upon completion, applicants will receive a copy of the background screening report. This report will be delivered via a secure link, send it an email. If you meet the requirements and your social equity status is verified, you will receive an email with the link to a PDF of your background screening report stating clear. So that's, if you are considered verified for social equity status, you would receive that PDF that would say clear. If you do not meet the requirements and/or your social equity status is not verified, you will receive an email with a link to a PDF of your background screening report stating under review. If you have been found to be under review, OCM will notify you with next steps. If social equity status cannot be verified, you will receive an email with a link to a PDF of your background screening report stating deficient. You will be responsible for uploading your social equity verification report on your application and entering your background screening report order number when requested. Failure to do so will result in a failed application in the event that you are applying as a social equity verified applicant. No, verification of social equity applicant status does not guarantee admission to the application lottery for the capped license types. It also does not ensure license approval or replace the need for other application materials as required by law. This is essentially an option to individuals if they choose to get verified. However, there is a completely separate application process that will take place for individuals that want to pursue or continue the process and pursue a cannabis business license. So, to be able to support you throughout this process, we have been working on a number of resources to ensure that you have what you need to be able to get on the ground running and make the necessary business decisions for yourself beginning as early as tomorrow. So, to support you through your verification process, we have put together a number of resources. These include a social equity verification guide that I'll talk about shortly, a social equity interactive mapping tool that I had spoken about as it relates to some of the various criteria. So you would be able to input your address and see if your address would be verified based off of the mapping tool that we've put together. And of course, this webinar, which will be published on our site at a later time. And essentially, we see this as a resource that you could be able to use, have side by side as you're going through the process to apply for social equity verification or make the decision on whether getting socially equity verified makes sense for you. Um, as always, for general questions from the Office of Cannabis Management, you can always reach out to us on our website at mn.gov/OCM. That's where you can find a lot of this content, in addition to just the information that is in this presentation. For specific questions about your social equity verification status, you would be able to email directly to minnesota@creativeservices.com. And I think that that essentially could be helpful once you officially get started within the verification process. As mentioned earlier, we have a Minnesota cannabis license social equity verification guide for applicants, and this really has all of the information that we discussed today during this webinar. And it has really a walkthrough of the entire process from start to finish in order to get verified. Um, I would say it's very digestible and very easy to be able to follow, as well as a number of screenshots similar to the way that I provided this during our presentation today. Um, this is currently on our website, so I encourage folks, if you choose to pursue social equity verification, if you are still considering it, if you are still weighing out your options, please take a look at this guide. Please, once this webinar is posted online, kind of weigh out your different options and see if this is the right decision for you. And if so, definitely get verified early. One additional item that I just wanted to note is that we are actively reviewing the questions that arrive to our office, and especially those about social equity applicants and social equity verification. We are looking at these all in real time and are developing responses to them. And especially as we are receiving questions that really could support a number of different audiences, we are posting them directly onto our website. So I used some of the questions that were submitted to us prior when registering for this webinar to be able to develop this webinar itself, but also we'll continue to use any questions that are submitted to us and make sure that they are reflected, whether it's through our guidance on our website or in our frequently asked questions. And so don't hesitate to reach out to us. Don't hesitate to reach out through our cannabis inbox, and we are more than happy to be able to support you through this process. And with that, I want to thank you all for taking the time to participate with us in this webinar today. We are excited to be able to launch a round of social equity verification beginning tomorrow. And so, as always, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out to myself. Feel free to reach out to others um, within our customer service office, as well as Creative Services Inc. And we will do our best to be able to respond to your questions. But of course, review our resources, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. Thank you.